Senator Rubio.
Thank you. I actually want to continue at that point because the choice right before us was two things. On the one hand was to continue with what we thought was the strategy, which is this international sanctions that had an impact on Iran's economy. They continued to make progress in their enrichment capabilities and so forth, but it was the combination of international sanctions and the threat of credible military force, which no one wants to talk about, but that was on the table. And the President has said that in fact, if it came down to it, the U.S. would do that if it were necessary, versus what we have now, which is a deal that basically argues, well, what this will do is that if they comply with it, it'll slow them down, and in 10 years, if they want to break out, it buys us 10 years of time, and it avoids assuming everybody complies with everything. Here's my problem with that analysis. My problem with it is that in 8 to 10 years, which sounds like a long time to all of us here, it's nothing. 10 years goes very quickly, and that's if we're optimistic. In 10 years, Iran will be in a much stronger position. In fact, I think in 10 years, they'll be immune from international pressure compared to where they are today. And here's why. First of all, they are going to use this sanctions relief and the billions of dollars that it frees up. And I know everybody wants to believe they're going to invest it in hospitals and roads and social services in order to win their next election. I promise you they're going to win their next election. I don't think they're worried about that as much as they are about their need, for example. They're going to get to modernize their enrichment capability into a 21st century industrial system. It actually falls right in line with the mandate that the Supreme Leader, I believe, gave their negotiators, which is don't agree to anything that's irreversible, but do anything, go as far as you need to go to get the sanctions removed, but don't agree to anything that's irreversible. So they'll have less centrifuges, but they'll be better ones, and they'll be modernized, and they'll retain that infrastructure, which is the hardest part of any nuclear program, is the infrastructure, the hardware that it takes to do this. But here's what else they're going to continue to do. They're going to continue to build their conventional capabilities. We don't think about that enough. But Iran in 10 years will have conventional capabilities, maybe less, that could potentially drive us out of the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz because the price of being there will be too high. I mean, they can buy Chinese asymmetrical capabilities that allow them to kill ships, add to these fast, swift boat things that they've been able to come up with that could threaten an aircraft carrier. They're going to continue to build long-range rockets. Why are you building a long-range rocket, an ICBM? Are they going to put a man on the moon? No. They're building it for purposes of targeting the continental United States. And they look at North Korea and say, yeah, the North Koreans have a long-range rocket. We don't know where it's going to hit because they're not very good yet at guidance, but it'll hit somewhere, like the west coast of the United States. That alone has made North Korea immune. And they're going to continue to build up their surrogates in the region, which I would argue already, even now, before the sanctions relief, has given Iran tremendous leverage over U.S. policy. As an example, Iran has laid out some pretty clear red lines. They are going to hold back the Shia militia in Iraq from attacking American troops or going after Americans. They will agree to hold them back if we don't cross certain red lines that they've made very clear. What are their red lines? For starters, they don't want to see any U.S. combat troops in Iraq. And if we make any move towards any sort of permanent presence in Iraq in the future, we're going to get attacked by Shia militias at their orders. They don't want to see us take any concrete steps to remove Assad from power. If they see us moving towards getting Assad out of power, we're going to get hit by their surrogate groups in the region, including Hezbollah and the Shia militia. If we take steps to try to help put in place an Iraqi government that actually unifies that country and isn't a puppet of Iran, not to mention one that may actually be hostile towards Iran's ambitions in the region, they're going to attack us. So they already have leverage over our policy. Now extrapolate that 8 to 10 years from now, when their conventional forces are higher, when these groups are better armed, when Hezbollah in a couple of years doesn't just have rockets, they have guided rockets, guided missiles that don't just hit somewhere in Israel, hit exactly what they want to hit. So imagine a world in 10 years where Iran decides, or 8 years or 12 years, where they just decide, you know what, we're building a nuclear weapon because we believe Israel has one, or because we think someone else is going to threaten us. What can the world do then? Well, then reimposing sanctions really won't be an option at that point, because all these companies that are deeply invested in that economy just won't let their nations, their governments do anything about it. We've already seen that in the case of the Europeans. But what will the price be of actually going after their systems? It'll be worse than the price of going after North Korea now. Do we have a credible military option today to target the North Korean program? We do not. We do not, because we know that the price of going after the North Korean program through a credible military option, the price of that is Tokyo, the price of that is Seoul, the price of that is Hawaii, they'll hit us back. Well, imagine Iran, where the price of going after the Iranian program in 10 years, if they decide to break out, will be Washington, D.C., or New York City, not to mention Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and any number of places in the region that are our allies. So my argument is that, in fact, what I think we've done here is walked right into the situation they wanted to lay out. They didn't want a nuclear weapon next week anyway. But we have created a system where in 8 to 10 years, they will have the capability to quickly walk into the nuclear weapons club, not sneak in, walk into the nuclear weapons club with a world-class industrial enrichment capability, a much more powerful conventional force capable of actually asymmetrically driving our Navy from the region or further out, and quite frankly immune from any sort of credible military action, because if we attack them, the price is going to be a nuclear devastating strike, potentially even on the continental United States. So my point is that when people vote on this deal in a few weeks, you're going to live for this for the rest of your life. In 10 years, in 12 years, when Iran has a nuclear weapon and we can't target them, people are going to remember this vote that's coming up in this deal as what laid the groundwork for it. And I keep hearing this notion that there's no other alternative and no other way forward. I disagree. I believe U.S. sanctions are the most important part of all the sanctions. I believe that, these banks in Europe, German banks, whatever banks may be, if they were forced to choose between having access to the American economy and access to the Iranian economy, that's not going to be a hard choice for them. I know there's not a question embedded in any of this, other than, I guess, Mr. Zarate, in the 30 seconds I have left, I would ask you, do you have any doubt that when these sanctions are removed and the billions of dollars flow in, that a significant percentage of that money will be used for the things I've just outlined, to develop long-range rockets, to develop their conventional capabilities, and to better equip their surrogate groups in the region?
Senator, I don't know what the percentage is going to be, but this is a regime that's already investing in those capabilities, has already increased its budget allocation for the IRGC, the Quds Force, and other elements of its security infrastructure. And there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to use some of the relief and the actual flow of capital to support their proxies, as I said in my testimony, from the Golan to Yemen. So there's no doubt in my mind. I don't know what the percentage is going to be, but it's going to be significant.